What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow little brother, Garrick Raphael. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good on this end. Just getting back in town from Vegas. Was out there to see the Brian Windhorst podcast live, man, which was an experience, man. It was good to see like some of the people who kind of carry the entertainment and the sports side of basketball, and some of the people who, whether you agree with them or not, are some of the faces of sports media. So it was good to kind of go out there and see. I did not go to the championship game because there was a glaring missing team from there. So I didn't go to the championship game, but I was out there for it. The vibe in Las Vegas was fire, man. The NBA has really done some things with that in-season tournament, and so it was really cool to be amongst that vibe and just see a lot of people excited about their teams and everything. And then I went to the sports bar and watched the Saints game, and the Saints did their thing and won begrudgingly, depending on who you ask. And then you saw some other people out there with like Pels gear out there and stuff, and so it was just cool to see the NBA kind of centralized in one location. And of course you had the fans of the other teams out there, but just to kind of see everybody have their own little section of a spot in Vegas was really cool. So it was good, man. It was good. How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. The house is going through a cold bug, so I'm trying to stay away from it as much as I can. But yeah, we gonna get into Vegas. Sure enough, we gonna get into Vegas.
I'm sure
Before we do that, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. Make sure you keep the comments coming. We want to hear from you in terms of your opinion, how the team is doing from game to game. And make sure you are subscribed to New Orleans Basketball if you are not. So let's rewind a little bit. So the Pelicans get a convincing win versus the Timberwolves, who going into the game had the number one record in the NBA. Now you found out that Anthony Edwards was not showing up and not going to play in this game. They're going to hold him back, be conservative in terms of keeping his body healthy throughout the whole season. But again, the Timberwolves have been playing good basketball. They played some games without him, won some games without him. Cat is starting to catch his rhythm from the three-point line, and their team is starting to click defensively. Jaden McDaniels makes his return back to the roster and things like that. But what the Pelicans do, they go in at home off a embarrassing, like I heard the word embarrassing used a lot for that Lakers win, but like I don't even know if that's the word, because and on one hand it's like, yes, you got shown up by LeBron, and I mean they kind of blew out everybody they played in the in-season tournament game, but like you got showed up on a national stage with your opportunity to kind of take that next step forward and alert the league that the Pelicans are now healthy. And you just totally whiff. Now, they were in Las Vegas. This is a team worth of 25 and unders for the most part. They probably don't get to go to Vegas very often in the middle of the season. There might be something to it. But all in all, it was a very disappointing loss, which, again, we'll talk into deeper depth before. But you're going into a game where, whether they have Ant or not, this is a game where I don't know if you needed to win, like a must win in December probably doesn't exist, but you needed to show that was an anomaly more than a trend in terms of that Lakers game. So they go on. Zion responds, starts with his career or his season high, 36 points on 77% shooting, just a ridiculous performance from his end. And things along the lines. And the Pelicans get a convincing win at home. What did you think about the response from the team after just such a disappointing showing out in Vegas.
Yeah, it was a rough weekend. It was a rough weekend for the Pelicans franchise. The Minnesota game was very interesting for me. It reminded me a lot of last season when the Pelicans, towards the end of the season, where the Pels had that team meeting against Houston after they lost to the Jabari game winner. They had a team meeting, and then they played the Rockets right after it, right? And so the thing about it was that the team meeting was happened, and then they came out and lost against the Rockets that night. And so that game, that second Rockets game, I said, this is an inflection point because you've had the team meeting and it still didn't work. What works now? Like what happens now? And so this was very similar, right? We've heard about the team meeting that CJ talked about on this podcast. And that has been widely reported on. And so, it was kind of like, all right, you had the team meeting, all of the anticipation, all of the build up to that in-season tournament game, all of the storylines between both of the franchises and the franchise faces, just a lot of intertwined webs. And for that to happen the way it did, which we'll get into later, it was like, well, what else, right? What else is there? And to Zion's credit, he was the focal point of the criticism, and he was the focal point of the rebound. And it could have been very easy for that loss and the things that came with it to snowball right into the Minnesota game. But there wasn't, right? It wasn't that. It was Zion saying to hell with it, to hell with all the criticism. I'm going to remind people of how good, I am. And he did, right? He against the NBA's leading defense, the stifle tower, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Cat, Zion did not give a damn, and he was at the rim. He got Rudy Gobert in foul trouble. And it just was a good showing of a guy who has gone through a lot in his short term and, in this short time in his career. It's not an excuse for what happened against the Lakers, but there's a lot going on, and things that you may not even know, right, about Zion. But for him to kind of shudder all that away and come out and play the game that he did, and not allow this team to tailspin and to stay right in the thick of things as far as the playoff contention goes. And so, it was a great showing by him. I think, obviously a lot of other people had, good games, right? This is the first time we've seen Zion, B.I., and CJ all score over 20 in a long, long time. But I think Zion needed, I tweeted at the end of that game, the Pelicans needed a win just to remind themselves that wasn't, like you say, an anomaly and that they have better aspirations. But I think the way they won, being led by Zion and having B.I., CJ be supportive, kind of be that supportive, hey, look, like go for it, like continue to cook, but also doing their thing and JV doing his thing. I think the way that they won was more important than the win. If it means just, that it shows the world and it shows Zion and it shows the Pelicans teammates that like that was an anomaly. This guy is still incredible and we can still get behind this guy and he can take us to where we need to go.
Sure. So the thing that I didn't love about the narrative exiting that game was like, oh, the Pelicans won because Anthony Edwards didn't play. Well, when the Timberwolves won by 1 point in New Orleans and Zion didn't play, nobody was like, okay, well, the Pelicans lost, but Zion and Trey Murphy are not out there. They're like, oh, the Timberwolves are blowing everybody out. So again, this is a league where who you have available and what your depth looks like matters throughout the season, because if you look at the standings, like 5 games separate like second place and like 12th place in the West. So every game is going to be important this season, a season where most people are like, oh, the first part of the season doesn't really matter. It kind of does this year. You can't dig yourself a big hole. So taking advantage and winning the games you should win are important.
Yeah, the Grizzlies are 10 games under 500, and Ja Morant is set to come back against the Pels next week. And it's like, well, can he make up? Can he himself make up so many games that they lost already, and like their season could be over for all we know. And so, like you said, like these early season games between the in-season tournament and the play-in tournament at the end of the season, the NBA is making like a lot of games matter to a lot of different teams. So you got to get the wins where you can get them.
Right. So then you talk about cooking, and you walk into this Wizards game, which they lost 5 in a row. They are playing for absolutely nothing. They're trying to see what they can mortgage off at the trade deadline and get assets back. But so far this season, the Pelicans have looked better against the good teams than they have the bad team. And so there was a little bit of worry. Oh, Zion's ruled out prior to the game, tweaked his ankle a little bit. Willie Green said it shouldn't be too serious, but he's not going to play. Is this going to be one of those letdown games like the Chicago game from that standpoint? Well, it started the game, and it was like, uh-oh, here we go again. The Pelicans are down 15, and you haven't even sat down with your crispy crunchy chicken yet and started to watch the game yet. Like you didn't even get to kick off, and the Pelicans are down 15. Is this going to be one of those trap games? Well, all you had to look at the fact that Kyle Kuzma played for the Wizards and Brandon Ingram played for the Pelicans. Because every time this man plays against Kyle Kuzma, he's giving you at least 25. And tonight he had his season high 40 points. What was your outlook on today's game? Pels run away with it, 142-122. Wasn't really that close after the second quarter. What are your thoughts about the game tonight? The Pelicans handled business even without a Zion Williamson.
Yeah, this was another impressive win, and for whoever the Wizards have on their roster, we've seen Kobe White, right? And so I asked you before the game. I said the Pelicans are not going to get Kobe Whited tonight by Jordan Poole or Kyle Kuzma, and for at the beginning they were right. Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram obviously have some history. They were teammates in LA. They try to go at each other a lot. When they get on the floor together, and so they have that thing going on. And Kuzma came out firing, doing the things that he does. Daniel Gafford, who I think would be a phenomenal fit as a reserve big on the Pelicans. The pride of Arkansas. He was doing his defensive things, and the Pelicans looked like they were lethargic and, kind of taking a step back by Zion not being there, or whatever the case is, right? They got into a shooting match. They forgot Jonas Valanciunas plays for them. Just all of the tendencies that we've seen from a bad Pelicans game, right? And then Willie Green called a timeout, and he brought in Jose and Najee, and they kind of breathed a little life into the game. And then, Trey got his thing going, get in the Trey a little bit later. And then Brandon Ingram, again, this was a masterclass from BI, right? I said a couple games ago was Brandon Ingram's best game as a Pelican. This was, again, not one of his best games as far as like what's on the line, but I mean 40 points, and it looked very easy, and nothing looked forced. Nothing looked like, oh, Zion's out, I have to be the guy that carries the entire offense. He let the game breathe, and it just felt like the Wizards did not have what the Pelicans had in Brandon Ingram. No matter where they were trying to go and where they were trying to find it, Brandon Ingram, whenever you needed it, came down and did what he did. And listen, Trey Murphy went on his Carter 2 shooter, fireman, whatever to take your Wayne hot boy reference and let it fly today. And it goes to show you that, Trey is still working himself into where you want to see him, right? Like, we forget that this guy hasn't played basketball, was on the torn meniscus, and is getting himself. And when he gets going, I called him 2 seasons ago the most ignitable player on the team. And with Jordan Hawkins there, with Matt Ryan there, is something about the way Trey shoots and the way when he gets one to go in early, you can pretty much wrap it up if you're not playing face guarded defense on him. And so I think, seeing him taking people off the dribble, sidestep to the open three, coming off of a dribble screen and just launching from the concession stands. Corey Kispert was in the gulag trying to decide, should I stay home on trade? Should I help Daniel Gafford with JV? Do I need to watch Brandon? I mean, they had Corey Kispert just in a baseball pickle the whole game. And so, you listen, when BI and Trey got it going like this, I think it is just it's an exciting brand of basketball. It's a winning basketball. And then I have what I would call the metronomes on the team, CJ and JV, just professionals, baseline of the team. You can always look and see what CJ and JV doing. One of them has 20 points. One of them, CJ might have 5 threes, or JV got 10 rebounds. Just a professional metronome keeps the baseline of the team. And I think this is one of the games where it could have been a trap game, could have been easy to blame it on. They got out and ran, and we just didn't have it tonight. But the Pelicans fought and fought and fought, and they came out, and the ending victory score looks like something you will want to see from a team who has aspirations of higher things. And shout out to her for the reverse Grinches tonight. That's an excellent choice, my man. I like to see them. I like to see them. That's good feats right there, boy.
So, of course, Najee, anytime he comes home that he's returning back, he apparently has 70 seats bought by Larry Nance for his return home. He almost had 20 points tonight. He was great. You mentioned him kind of coming off the bench and providing a boost where, again, there are going to be games where Jose and Najee are needed because the team is lacking energy. And these are those games where they pick the team up and everybody follows that lead. You love it from that perspective. Najee's really improved his three-point shot up until this point this season. So it's giving him more opportunity, more run, because he can spread the floor a little bit better than some of the other defensive first players. Now, the problem with this game from my angles is the Pelicans still haven't figured out. Zion mentioned this in his post-game presses a couple of times. There's so much talent on this team, but there's still like nuances of the game that show the youth from this team. So in terms of like who to close out on, who to leave open, but also when to know who are your mismatches on the floor. Like we talk about, if Zion's out, you've got to play a different way. Now, your best skill set, even without Zion, is still getting to the rack because most of your players are drive first players, and JV is a paint first player. Whereas you only have CJ, Trey, Hawk, and Matt Ryan's injured for some time. Everybody else is not really a shooter from that perspective, right? And so in those games, you should still play to your advantage, which is majority of the time, which we've been screaming about, is probably Jonas Valanciunas. And tonight on the broadcast, Antonio Daniels, I felt like you could see that vein coming from his head about to pop, like, just throw him the ball. They finally started throwing JV the ball in the second quarter, and sure enough, the game turned upside down. And so I just want to see this team as the season goes on figure that out quicker. Like this game, this is going to be our mismatch. This game, this is what we're going to go kill. This game is going to be your game, CJ, your game, BI, your game, Trey. Figure that out quicker versus kind of like playing in the middle and letting teams get a lead on you. Because if you do that versus not the Washington Wizards, you get what you get in the LA Lakers game, right? Like that's what happens when you play versus real teams and you play that way. So that's the only alarming thing. Now, Trey Murphy, the third. I think going into this season, the reason people were excited about the Pelicans, obviously you have Zion, you have Brandon Ingram, was because everybody wanted to see that leap from Trey Murphy. And I think it lost in the shuffle because Trey gets injured, doesn't get to start the season, misses the first 21 games or whatever it is. Now people are just like, oh, Trey's just back. Like, it's just good to have Trey back from what he was doing last season. But in the short amount of time, even though, again, this is Trey's fourth game back from injury, you've already seen the improvements in Trey's game. Not just his ability to space the floor and to shoot and to dunk, but you can see his activity is constant. Like, he was all over the place. You always talk about those guys that stay on the street corner with the signs that their arms waving. I feel like that's Trey all the time. He's jumping across the court trying to create extra activity or extra opportunities, get extra rebounds, just get extra deflections. You saw him bringing that consistently, even when the shot wasn't falling. You saw him more comfortable off the dribble and pump faking and bringing it down, or sidestepping and shooting the ball. Things like these are things that Trey was not doing last season. And so for a player who's just working himself back into basketball shape, NBA regular season shape, to see him using some of the things he put together this summer, like, that has got to be extremely encouraging for this team, right?
Yeah. Like, to piggyback on your point, another thing that his increased, his increased capacity for the game, like, it's all over the place. It's not just his shooting. Right, his shooting was already great, but now it's better. But his increased capacity for the game tonight, with Zion out and Larry Nance out, Willie Green let him play some five, let him play some of the down man. And like you said, when you're active and you're getting in the mix of things and going in for rebounds and just being tall, and then you realize that, oh wait, you are 6'9", 6'10", so it's like it's not fairly out of the realm of possibility that you could get rebounds and play big and play tall, especially against lineups where like Danilo Gallinari is the backup five. Like, right. Showing some Trey Murphy at five, and you saw like there was no way to match up and transition with him, and he kept getting open for threes because it was like, well, does Gallinari go out there? He's the five, but he can't guard him. So and then once he started getting the three, you saw, like you said, to his improvement and increased capacity of the game, when people started closing out on him, man, Daniel Gafford almost got put on a poster. And you forget that this guy also competes in the dunk contest. So his increased capacity and his overall improvements on across the board are super important. And you're starting to see it as he gets into his playing shape and his playing capacity. Like, you're seeing like this guy has a really, really high ceiling.
All right. So Pelicans close this one out. They win by 20, win big, go on to play the Charlotte, moving that. Like, the next couple games, we'll get into it, but the next couple games are just like, come on, you got to win these. But we talk about Najee Marshall having a great homecoming game tonight. Jordan Hawkins also made his homecoming game, who hasn't been in the rotation as of late. We talk about Jose, we talk about Dyson, we talk about Trey making his comeback, we talk about Najee, but Jordan Hawkins has kind of been the odd man out. And Willie Green has talked about, hey, you've got to stay ready, Jordan, because there's going to be a time when we need you. I think that there's going to be time sooner rather than later that the team needs him. And so my question to you is, what does he have to do to kind of force Willie's hand? Like, we talk about how Jose, came onto the scene and took his minutes, and there was no way you could take him off the court. How does Jordan Hawkins do that with so much firepower available night in and night out? Is it just the nights where Zion sits or BI sits or CJ sits? Or is there a way he can say, you can't take me off this floor? Because to your point, the game just looks different when Trey's at the five and everybody's five out like it's a rec game in 2K and there's so much space on the floor. Well, it's the same thing if Jordan Hawkins is on the floor and Trey's on the floor and another shooter's on the floor and you have BI or Zion. It's a much different equation to what the floor looks like. So how does one rookie, who again Willie Green tends to shy away from, how does he earn himself into the rotation?
It's going to be tough. And I think that it's going to be tough because of what we talked about what Willie Green is comfortable with, right? Like, we've seen this movie multiple times, right? And it's funny because it's almost like it happens. It's like a Pelicans thing, right? Because like, even if you go back to the time, you remember the times where Eric Bledsoe was playing in front of Nickel, and and you would tag Garrett Temple playing instead of Trey. Like, it seems like something that you go through, right? And obviously this isn't the same situation because Jose and Najee are contributing and they're doing things where you can't say, okay, well, they need to come off the floor, right? Jose had a 0 for 5 game against against the Timberwolves, and I thought Jordan Hawkins could have got some of those minutes. But we see that Willie Green is going to go with what he's comfortable with. And I think what Jordan he can do is like nights like this, right, where you are forced to be played, right? There is no other body, so Willie Green has to play you, and you just have to take advantage of that, right? And you have to show that while you're out there, you can contribute in a multitude of ways, right? Tonight, he didn't have the shot flowing, but I liked his activity. I liked the rebounds. Like, he's a really good rebounder. I always tweet about his rebounding. He's a phenomenal rebounder for a rookie. He's a phenomenal rebounder for a guard. He's a phenomenal rebounder for a three-point shooter, three-point shot hunter. He just has a knack for the ball. And so his energy and I think his like I call it the heat check mentality, like the tonight, he and Trey stopped above the break, right one step ahead of the timeline, and kind of played hot potato until it got back to Trey and he hit the three. But I think that type of mentality helps the Pelicans in a lot of different ways. Strictly with one of the reasons really being, when you stopping on the break and it's Jordan Hawkins or Trey Murphy, somebody has to account for them, which means somebody is not in the paint to build that wall in front of Brandon Ingram, build that wall in front of Zion. And so I think, there's going to be uses for him. And we've seen when he gets going, he's very similar to Trey, right? When they see one go in, you can probably bet that there are going to be a couple of more going in that night too. So I think just when he gets the opportunities, and listen, this is a Pelicans team that we know there's going to be injuries, right? We just got an update on Matt Ryan, who we thought was going to come back at the end of November, beginning of December, that he's out for another 6 to 8 weeks. And so there's going to be people not playing. Zion sits on back-to-backs, and, obviously he's dealing with an ankle issue now. And, you just know that there's going to be opportunities for him to play, because that's just what happens when you play for the Pelicans. And so when he gets those opportunities, he has to take advantage of them, get those threes up, make those threes, but show that you can do things other ways and contribute in other ways and catch Willie Green's eye. And, I think as he continues to grow, develop, I can see it on his face that this is a guy that wants to play. Like, this isn't just like a normal rookie who just accepts being benched. Like, again, this is a guy who won the national championship and like is an older rookie. He's not 19, he's not 20. He's an older rookie. And so he wants to play and contribute. And I think that this is welcome to the NBA moment. I don't know if it's the right call, again, because I think that Jordan Hawkins has some opportunities that he could play. But it's all you can do right now, and it's lip service. But the only thing you can do is listen to Willie and stay ready. And when your number is called, take advantage of it.
Yeah, I just think what he brings to the team, we always talk about it. It's just, it doesn't exist right now. And so he's kind of a offense in himself, to your point, when those times where offense just looks clunky, if he's on the floor with a Zion or BI, like, he automatically gets better because of the gravity that they have. And it automatically makes them better because of the gravity that he has that maybe some of the other players don't have. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So the person who wasn't involved with tonight's win was Zion Williamson. Again, he rolled his ankle a little bit at the end of that Timberwolves game. Willie Green says he doesn't expect him to be out very much. But again, the Vegas loss happened. And to be honest with you, the loss itself doesn't bother me that much, because I think sometimes throughout the course, especially of a long NBA season, you need some humbling moments, especially if you're a team with a lot of talent that hasn't built the reputation that, like, oh, we'll get past this. You need some moments to kind of say, we're not there yet, and these are the things that are humbling us, and this is how we respond. And so the loss itself doesn't bother me. It was almost the mentality of both Zion and the team, right? Like, you had an opportunity to do something and you didn't do it after talking about doing it leading up to that. And like, that was the biggest thing that stepped up to me. But obviously everything that's been in the news, as always, is about Zion. Like, literally, I had so many people send me texts after the game, was like, what's wrong with Zion? He's out of shape. I'm like, 2 days ago, we were talking about this man not missing a shot and scoring 31 points. And now you're telling me that this guy is this, that, and the other. But you see it from everywhere. You see his ex-trainer on IG saying, I told you so, basically. You see, Charles in check. You see Stephen A. just absolutely wilding out there. You see a lot of people attacking him, for his weight. And to be honest, we've been talking about it in the show since game one. I haven't loved his body language in terms of running up and down the court. Like, there's been too many times where he just leaves the team 4-on-5 because he's not in shape enough to get back or whatever it may be. Like, that's been an issue all season long. I don't know why. I do know why, because it was versus the Lakers and versus LeBron on that stage. But that's not the thing to, like, get at Zion for this moment. It's the consistency, right? He's still building himself back. He hasn't played basketball since January. He's still getting back to his rhythm. He wasn't really Zion until January of last year when people start talking about him as an MVP candidate, because he was hurt before that too. So it's kind of like in the cards for him to take a little time before he really shows who he is to start a season. But is that the issue in itself, right? When you have that type of talent and you control so much of a team's destiny, it shouldn't take you half the season to get to where you should be. So you should kind of start the season that way. So my question to you is the issue Zion being in shape or game shape at game 20, whatever of the season, 25 of the season, or is the issue just the maturity is getting there, but it's not there yet? And that's what this team needs from its best player to go where they want to go.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, the Lakers game was embarrassing. It was terrible. It was awful. It was something that, the Pelicans should be ashamed to have said. Like, that was what was on the floor, right? There was a lack of energy. There was a lack of motivation. It just looked like and that's why, it looked like a bunch of guys that went out in Vegas. Like, it did. Like, it just looked like a bunch of guys that went to Vegas with $100K checks and didn't take it as seriously. They were there for 2 days as opposed to 1 day. And so, that it's just it just seemed like a team that wasn't there, right? Mm-hmm. But the Zion coverage of his game in Las Vegas is about as clear as an example that the in-season tournament is working just like the NBA wants it to do. It is the clearest example of it, because Zion had he picked the worst possible time to have his worst game of the season. Mm-hmm. The worst possible time. And I think that is what, they always talk about is not what you say, is how you say it. And I think that is what we saw in this loss. It's not that you lost, it's when you lost, right? All eyes are on you. You get the 8:00 game, like there's a 4:00 game. People are at 4:00 Central Time. People are still at work. They don't get out till 5. They got to go get the kids. They got to get the kids settled. So, people are catching the third quarter of that Celtics Pacers game, right? You get the 8:00. Everybody settled. Everybody in. Everybody sitting. The TNT ESPN crew are together now. Like, they've had one of their games. All the pleasantries are out. Now they're like focused on the game and stuff. You're playing LeBron. You're playing the Lakers. All eyes are on you. There's a lot of talk about LeBron owning franchises in Vegas, and would this be to his legacy? And you got Zion, who is the competing star, right? The up and coming, this is the next guy. And you laid an egg. But if this was 2 games in December and it was no in-season tournament, I don't know if you would get the same kind of vitriol and coverage, because Zion has played some really, really good games in this season, some dominant games, including the one right after the Lakers game. And I think that, listen, the things that, like you said, that he put on in front of the world's eyes, everybody who's been watching Pelicans games all season it obviously was an exaggerated and way worse form. But like you said, you saw the not getting back on defense, looking a little out of shape. Zion himself said, "I'm not Zion yet. Like, I'm still work." So, like, we've all seen this throughout the season. It's accompanied with 30 points on 60% shooting and things like that. But we've all seen this. And so for it to go from, he is, this supernova talent to, he's is this, that, and the third, and everything but the child of God. And then for him to come back and do what he did against the Timberwolves, it's a throwback to one of my favorite quotes. My favorite quote. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And it's going to be like that with Zion through this entirety. So I do think there is some maturity that needs to happen with Zion. Growth is not linear, and neither is leadership, neither is maturity, none of that is linear, right? We've seen Zion take good steps this season, right? Tonight was the first game he's missed because of an injury. And it's not because of like weight issues or anything. He turned his ankle coming down on somebody after scoring 33 points. So
and they're playing the Wizards.
Right, and they played the Wizards. Like, this is the first game related to injury that he's missed. And it really wasn't a game that you like needed him, honestly. And so, like, we've seen him take steps, right? Things we saw him come into the season in shape and ready to play. So there are steps. Does he have a long way to go? Absolutely. But I'm going to close this with saying I heard a stat and it put into perspective of how good he is and how young he is, because he was the first player in NBA history to have, like, I think it's more than 10 games of 30 points on 75% shooting before the age of 24. And it's like, man, if this guy can play for 5 more years, he'll be 28, 29 years old, which is younger than us, right? And so I just, there's a long runway for Zion and his growth. And he is trugging along to get there. But is he taking steps? Yes. Was the Lakers game embarrassing, terrible, dreadful? Absolutely. It wasn't the playoffs. It's not the end of the season. With the Pelicans, would I have liked the Pelicans to win the tournament, that game, and win the tournament? Absolutely. It is an important tournament. I think people should be invested in it. But it didn't end the season. They played Monday. That game was Thursday. They played Monday. There's a lot of time left. And if that Minnesota game is anything, it shows you that this guy is still really freaking good and really hard to stop. And you just have to let him grow up and mature and focus on the things that he need to focus on. He's a millionaire. I get it. He's a professional athlete, and he should be focused in on it, and it should not take. But everybody is not the same. And when you talk about LeBron having the blueprint, that is a one-of-one blueprint. Nobody is going to ever get to that blueprint. Giannis has tried, and even he is falling short of the blueprint that LeBron has out. So not everybody's the same. Not everybody's leadership is the same. Not everybody's body type is the same. Not everybody's growth is the same. And that's all I got from this. It was embarrassing. They should not have gone out like that. But it's one game. You have to continue pressing on and cannot let that snowball into the rest of your season. And Zion and the Pelicans didn't let that happen.
I think it's very simple. Zion is damned if you do, he's damned if you don't. So the only thing you can do at this point is strap him up with your teammates and go prove you are what you are, because nothing that you say and nothing that you do will deter other people's mind until you make it through a season with 65 games. You take your team to a Western Conference champ. Until you do those things, every time Zion has a bad game, you will hear about it on First Take. So, again, it's up to him. And I think the biggest thing with Zion, we've talked about that flip kind of switching this year. Like, though, he's short with media. Like, he's embracing a little bit of the villain mentality that there's nothing I can say or do to convince you guys. So he just does it. And so at this point, it's just putting in the work and showing up and filling up the stat sheet and putting W's in the win column. That's the only thing that's going to change the narrative. And so far, as they get healthy, you're starting to see that play out. So let's talk about the rest of December. It looks very favorable. I'll put it that way for the Pelicans. They have 8 more games, both 4 on the road, 4 at home. Ja Morant returns for 2 games, but just like we talk about Trey and CJ coming back, like I don't expect Ja to be Ja in game 1 or game 4 in his return. Will he probably put on a show because it's the Pelicans? Probably. But outside of that, I don't expect him to have his full powers at that point. So really, you're only talking about the Rockets game, who they've been playing better as of late, the Cavs and the Lakers. Other than that, you're playing a whole bunch of teams you need to win. I don't think it's like you should win. It's like you need to beat these teams under 500 because, again, we just talked about it. You're going to look at the end of the season. I feel like there's going to be like 8 teams within 1 or 2 games of one another unless someone pulls away at some point. So why not be the Pelicans? And I think this is stretch 4. What are your thoughts about the rest of December and how the Pelicans probably need to take advantage of it?
Yeah, this is the stretch. This is the stretch. This is the month where you make up for some of the losses that you've had early in the season, and kind of string together some wins, right? It really started at the beginning of December, I thought, where they let a Chicago game slip away. But I did when we looked at the schedule, I said that they would probably beat Chicago and lose to Minnesota. So you flip-flop. So you still on that same track that I think that you could be in. You got the Spurs and the Hornets and all of those teams coming up, and I just think, without LaMelo, like they're playing better, but there's no LaMelo there, and so you should have the advantage and be the favorite in a lot of games in December. And this is a time to kind of band on the road, right, and get some of those wins on the road, and you start getting some of that good mojo on the road, and that'll get your road record up and pile those wins on, and so. If you're not going to go out and beat the bad teams, then you need to think about what you're going to do and what your focus is and what your aspirations are anyway. And so this is an opportunity where you beat the people in front of you. You take no game for granted because you haven't proved anything at all, right? And the reason you're favorite is because of your talent. It's not because you're like some historic franchise or got some team that has shown that they could win over and over again. It's because of your talent. So you haven't proved anything. And so you have to go out and beat each team. And like you said, address what the mismatch is that night. Don't take anyone for granted. We've seen what happens when you do with Kobe White. You saw for a quarter with Kyle Kuzma, and you saw what happened when a team did flip that switch and lock in. And so this is an opportunity to get some wins. And if the old adage is, if not now, then when. And so the Pels got to go out, take care of their business, and beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. If you really think that you're that team, and that you want to, wash the taste of that Vegas loss out, then go out there and beat some of these teams the way you did tonight by 20 and 30, and leave no doubt at all. And so this is an opportunity for the Pels to do that.
Right, and it's not like they couldn't use them. Like they're still like in the 10th spot in the West right now. Like you need to. They talk about being a top 6 team, a top 4 team with home field advantage. You're ways away. You can't let that gap get too far away. So you're chasing the Nuggets and you're chasing the Timberwolves and OKC or whatever late in the season. You need to start bridging that gap a little bit. So you talk about poetic justice, and the last game of the year on New Year's Eve is the Lakers coming to the Smoothie King Center. So wouldn't it be poetic justice for the Pelicans to go on a run and to be able to right a little bit of some wrongs at home going into the new season? So that's all we got for you this episode. The Pelicans are back on their second game of their 3-game road trip against the Hornets on Friday. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. The Pels are back from Vegas, and they got a lot of season to play. So, this is an opportunity for them to kind of put that in the past. They've already off to a good start with 2 wins since that loss. See how far they can keep it going, right? Get on a 5, 6, 7 game heater, and see where that takes you, right? And see how quick that narrative will change if you could pile on some wins. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball No E. That's on Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Network, and we'll see you guys next time.